Welcome in, everybody, to this Tuesday edition, September the 18th of the JM Sports Show. We are doing what we do every week around this time, and that is discuss college football. I'm a big college football fan, as you can probably imagine, and we've done preseason show. We've done week 1, 2, and 3 recaps. I will get an NFL recap at some point. I generally like with the NFL waiting a bit because with college, week in and week out of the utmost importance because one or two losses and you're out of the playoff race. In the NFL, I think you can go more so like every 3 or 4 weeks, unless of course there's a major story. But that being said, and obviously some big stories in the NFL this week, I'll probably get one up maybe tomorrow, depending on how things go. But today, college football, doing what I've done with the top 25 and Heisman Watch. Here's my top 25 after this week. There were obviously some cancellations this week because of the Hurricane Florence down there in the Carolinas and Virginia. So my thoughts and prayers with those affected by the flooding down there. And that certainly had an impact on college football this week with a few games being canceled, including some teams in the top 25. But without further ado, with all the upsets, with all the big conference games and ranked games, this was one of the better weeks we've had so far. Week 2 was a little bit of a snoozer because a lot of teams were playing much weaker opponents. This week, we got some good games. Alabama stays at number 1 as they win in a blowout fashion in their SEC opener against Ole Miss, 62-7. They become the first SEC team in history to score 50-plus points in their first 3 games. And they almost had 50 by halftime. They were up 49-7, which is their largest halftime score against an SEC foe since 1990 when they put 52 on Vanderbilt. Saban's, this is probably the best offense we've seen. Traditionally, Saban teams aren't this explosive. They generally, they can put up points against especially weaker teams, but not at this level, not at this clip. They're generally more defensive. Not that this team isn't, but the focus on this team certainly seems to be the offense at Joe Tagovailoa and all the weapons at his disposal. They scored on 7 of their first 9 possessions, and they have Texas A&M on Saturday. Remaining at number 2 is Clemson. They had a pretty weak opponent in Georgia Southern, and they blew out 38-7. Trevor Lawrence did have to play the entire second half. Kelly Bryant suffered a bruised chest, so was kept out as a precaution. But Lawrence was good. He went 12-19 for a $194, had a TD, also threw a pick. They travel to Atlanta for their conference opener. That's up against Georgia Tech on Saturday afternoon. So their first taste of ACC play this year comes in week 4. Number 3 are the Georgia Bulldogs, and they won handily over Middle Tennessee State, 49-7. They've had some injuries on this defense, so it was a good chance to see a new look defense. And they looked better than they did in week 2 as they took care of the Blue Raiders, with holding them to 288 yards of total offense and just 14 first downs. The secondary, led by first-time starters Mark Webb and William Poole, held Middle Tennessee State to just $130 through the air. But they do have an SEC test coming up against Missouri in Columbia, so that should be an interesting game there. Number 4, I have Oklahoma. They were 5th in my previous 2 rankings. I think like 7th and then 5th. Now they're 4th, so now they're in my playoff picture. They get up ahead. They win big. Not big. I mean, 37-27 in their conference opener against Iowa State. The offense continued to roll even without Rodney Anderson, their star back, who suffered the season-ending knee injury in the win against UCLA in week 2. They piled up 519 yards of offense. Kyler Murray, a big part of that, going for 328 yards and 3 TDs. He also had 77 yards on the ground on 15 carries. They come home. They get a non-conference foe in Army on Saturday night. Then Ohio State, I have them as my new fifth, so they've climbed up in the rankings significantly since my preseason poll, as they defeated the seventh-ranked TCU 40-28. This is the end of the suspension for Urban Meyer. They survived it. Not only did they survive, but they thrived. They come into a neutral site game that's really a road game, just being so close to TCU down there at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. But Haskins, his first test away from the shoe, passed a flying colors as he goes 24-38, 344 yards and 2 TDs. Ohio State comes home for one last non-conference game up against Tulane on Saturday. The first game, they get Urban Meyer back. LSU is my new sixth-ranked team. They had an impressive win against I believe it was in the AP poll, sixth ranked. I had Auburn, I think, in my top 5 as well. 22-21. Grit over flash. Best describes Joe Burrow at quarterback. He did have an excellent fourth quarter. That 71 yard touchdown pass to Derek Dillon. And then he was obviously a big part of that drive that was capped by the game-winning, time-expiring 42-yard field goal from Cole Tracy. They go back to a non-conference foe for Week 4 as they host Louisiana Tech. Then I have Stanford. They climb up a couple spots as they took care of business against UC Davis with a 30-10 win. It was a game that Bryce Love missed due to an undisclosed injury, but they still rolled. Final tune-up before they play Oregon in a major Pac-12 North showdown. West Virginia, their game was one of those canceled due to performance. I still have them at 8. If they had won, that would have been their second Power 5 victory outside of conference. No plans for the game to be rescheduled at the moment. Perhaps it will be, but not at the moment. They host Kansas State in Morgantown on Saturday afternoon. Then I have at 9th, I have Notre Dame. They another really close game that shouldn't have been so close. 22-17. They beat Vanderbilt. They've struggled in the second half on offense, averaging just 3.9 yards to play after the half. But I say a win still a win. They're 3-0. And they look to go to 4-0 as they head to Wake Forest on Saturday afternoon. We'll have to see if that team does get through. It should. I don't think Wake Forest is actually that close to the coast. But we'll see if that does get played with the devastation from Florence still being a big impact across the Carolinas. 10th, I have Penn State, and they took care of business against Kent State 63-10. Trace McSorley had 5 touchdowns in total. 3 of them were on the ground. He added 2 more through the air. It was his 24th career rushing touchdown, setting career marks at Penn State. They barely beat Appalachian State in Week 1, obviously the 45-38 overtime victory. But the last 2 games are taking care of business against weaker foes. 114-16 against Pitt and against Kent State combined score. They actually have Illinois for their Big Ten opener in Champaign this weekend, Friday night actually. But I still had them go up a spot to 10th. Mississippi State, I had at 11th. They beat Louisiana. That's Louisiana at Lafayette, 56-10. Nick Picciardo, their second game back in suspension, had a passing touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns, as he just played in the first half against the Raging Cajuns, becoming just the 3rd player in SEC history to have 35 career touchdowns, rushing or passing. He joins Tim Tebow and his predecessor down there, Enoch, or Mississippi State, with Dak Prescott. They have a SEC game up against Kentucky on Saturday night. Virginia Tech, their game against East Carolina was canceled. East Carolina went to Orlando instead due to Florence. Unlikely to be made up due to scheduling conflict. We have another kind of weaker team on Saturday afternoon in Old Dominion. So they went down a bit due to not playing and the fact that they might not get that game in. 13th ranked Washington, they took care of business in a conference opener against Utah, 21-7. They do. They are. You can see they're missing All-American left tackle Trey Adams with that back injury, but their production was good. Miles Jackson goes for $143 in a score. Jake Browning has a touchdown each on the ground and in the air. And the defense did a good job in holding Utah to just 261 yards of total offense while forcing 3 turnovers. They return home for Arizona State. That game's on, I believe, at like 9:30 Eastern in back there in Pullman. So late Saturday night game for Washington fans on the East Coast. 14th ranked, I have Auburn. They lost to LSU 22-21. Auburn blew an 11-point lead late in the second half. It was just their third time in the previous 32 games they blew such a lead. They did it last year, of course, against LSU when they were up 20-0. They looked to rebound Saturday against Arkansas. Really big loss at home because they do have some tough road games down the stretch, including at Alabama. So not sure what that means for Auburn. They obviously need to win out to have any semblance of hope for the college football playoff. And looking at how competitive the SEC West is, even that one loss meant that we have the LSU, you have Mississippi State, you have Alabama, of course, all in the SEC West and all very, very competitive teams. I mean, I think you can even add in the Texas A&M with that one loss. 15th, I have undefeated Oregon. They beat San Jose State 35-22. Not exactly a blowout. I think everyone kind of expects a blowout when you're playing a team like San Jose State. But Justin Herbert struggled. He threw 2 picks. He was 16-34. The running game never really got established. He did throw, though. Herbert did throw for 3 touchdowns. So he now has 12 on the year. And they need to get a big win against Stanford on Saturday night. Oregon might be back. They might be back. I think Saturday night against Stanford might really show how much they've progressed after a couple of years in the dumpster for the Ducks. 16th ranked UCF. Their game was canceled against UNC against Florence. That was kind of a big disappointment because I think that would have been a really excellent game. But they will play FAU on Friday night with that extra week of rest. They get 17th ranked Oklahoma State. They get a ranked victory against Boise State 44-21. Paul Feinbaum called them the Sooners pregame, but they are the Cowboys. They are the Pokes, and they led the way. Their defense was so strong that they sacked Brett Rypien, the Broncos quarterback, 7 times. Rypien had just been sacked 6 times in previous 4 games dating back to last year. Jordan Brailford, the defensive end, with 3. Terrell Owens adds 2 from the other defensive end position. Devin Harper had 1.5. They open up conference play up against Texas Tech on Saturday night as they welcome to the rankings Oklahoma State. 18th, I have Colorado. They're up to the 23rd. They beat New Hampshire 45-14. They really did well against an FCS opponent. They forced 3 turnovers, 5 sacks, and held New Hampshire to just 42 rushing yards. They are 3-0, and for the second straight year, they open up conference. They're 3-0 for the second straight year, and they open up conference play up against UCLA on Saturday. 19th, I have Michigan. They beat SMU 45-20. Another blowout win against the so-called Sisters of the Poor. The Wolverines have to be frustrated, though they committed 13 penalties for $137. But Shea Patterson, I think he played excellently for the second straight game. 3 touchdown passes in back-to-back games. He had one to Donovan Peoples-Jones, the wide receiver. That matched the total for all of Michigan's wide receivers from last year. They open up conference play at the Big House against the Cornhuskers in Nebraska. 20th, TCU. They lost to, of course, Northwest 40-28. Just too many mistakes. Sean Robinson had a sack, fumble, recovered for a touchdown. He also threw 2 picks, including a 28-yard pick six. Able to recover in conference play against Texas and Austin on Saturday afternoon. 21st ranked Wisconsin. They, of course, lost to BYU 24-21. The Cougars came into that game as 23-point road dogs, but and they only had one previous win against an AP top 10 against Pitt. But still, I mean, you remember some of the big wins against top 25 schools. You know, BYU's always a tough play. That win against Pitt came back in 1984, by the way. Slow start from Wisconsin. This time they couldn't overcome it. And something just seems a little bit off for the Badgers these past couple of weeks, and they do lose. They look to recover as they go to Iowa to open up conference play on Saturday night. 22nd, speaking of them, Iowa, they come into the top 25 as they beat Northern Iowa 38-14. Cupcake schedule, but their defense has only given up a buck 28 on the ground in the first few weeks, and they just gave up 6 to Northern Iowa out of the FCS, and they only had 25 the week before that. But as they play Jonathan Taylor, obviously one of the best backs in the country, a Heisman hopeful in Wisconsin, should be a much tougher schedule to see if they're even in the rankings next week as they debut at 22nd. 23rd, I have Texas A&M holding on to the rankings as they beat Louisiana at Monroe 48-10. Nice bounce back win after losing to Clemson. Warhawks get covered. Kellen Mond goes to 210 yards in a score, runs in an additional 2, but has to be even better. They had Tuscaloosa place the number 1 ranked Crimson Tide on Alabama on Saturday afternoon. 24th, I have Miami. They hammered Toledo 49-24. Rozier. That was a great game, confidence boosting for the Hurricanes quarterback as he finishes with 2 scores through the air, adds 3 out with his legs. Did not commit a turnover. They do lose star safety Shaquan Johnson with a hamstring. He had to sit out the entire second half with that injury. So we'll have to see if he can come back from that. Hamstring injury is obviously very tough on the secondary players. And then Miami plays up against FIU on Saturday afternoon. They like Florida International up there on Saturday afternoon. And then Texas comes into the game. They beat ranked opponent in USC 37-14. I think if Texas is ever to return to prominence, it will have to be with Todd Orlando's defense. And they did play well. It's going to be all on journey back to national prominence, but it might have started on Saturday night. Will home cooking, they upset the Trojans, holding them to 16 rushing yards. 16 rushes for -5 yards. The Trojans. That was the previous low. That was the Trojans' lowest since they played Arizona way back in 1999. So Texas back in the top 25, and maybe a big win on their return to prominence. Maybe. I know they have some of those wins where maybe, and then they kind of lose, but they play TCU on Saturday. Heisman stuff, Kyler Murray up. Nice performance without Rodney Anderson. Jonathan Taylor, neutral. He played decent, but his team suffered a big loss up against BYU. So give a little less stock up. He might be my favorite at this point as Alabama keeps dominating. Might become the second Hawaiian player ever, joining Marcus Mariota to win a Heisman. And then Trace McSorley, his stock's up. He's an excellent, even in the close one against Appalachian State. Really, it was his performance that helped them there. He keeps setting these school records and looks for more of the same as Penn State opens up conference play. And then Nick Fitzgerald, welcome to the Mississippi State. He missed the first game with a suspension, but he's been excellent. 2 great games in a row. Bulldogs are 3-0. He's going to need to be great because this SEC West is a great-looking division. So that's my new top 25, my Heisman watch for the week. Fun week in college football. Another fun week coming up in week 4. I want to thank everyone for watching. You can follow me on Twitter at jmoney18c. You can also subscribe to me here for several videos each week covering all sorts of sports topics. We've done NBA, WNBA, college football, baseball, and NFL, and all that good stuff. So just subscribe to me here on the channel for more of these streams. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.